Tell me a little bit. I mean, obviously, running as a third party candidate, and I know whenever I talk with you, third party candidate guys, Libertarian Party guys, you get flustered by this. But it's always the question when you guys get in the race is how much traction can you get in against a Republican candidate, against a Democrat candidate in a race like this?
Well, you keep asking me to give you something to write about, so maybe I can give you something to write about with this. I plan on running the most effective Libertarian congressional candidacy of all time.
Okay.
I want this to be the single most successful campaign by a Libertarian congressional candidate in the history of U.S. politics. That sounds pretty grandiose, and I get it, and I understand. But the fact of the matter is, and I think you're well aware of this, Rob, and you touch on this quite often, there's a large portion of North Dakotan voters and U.S. voters that are simply fed up with the two-party system. They've had enough of Republicans, they've had enough of Democrats, and they're looking for some serious change, and that's what I'm going to try and offer them.
I want to challenge the callers. Would you consider voting for a Libertarian Party candidate or a third-party candidate? Call in number 701-293-9000, 888-970-9329. I want to hear, would you consider running or voting for a third-party candidate? Jack, give us some of your, I mean, we know, you want to offer a third choice that's not a Republican, that's not a Democrat. What are some of your specific, give us some planks out of your platform.
Sure. Well, first of all, the biggest issue to me is fiscal policy and debt in our country. We're headed for some serious problems financially. Everybody knows it, but yet nobody seems to be able to do anything about it in Washington. So I'm very serious about slashing our spending. The Republicans want to cut $1 trillion over 10 years. I'd like to cut $1 trillion in 1 year. That would be some serious spending reduction. When it comes to taxes, I'm a proponent of H.R. 25, which is proposed legislation in the House that is the Fair Tax Act. There's 74 co-sponsors of this bill, so it's not like it's completely dead. There's 74 congressmen saying they support it. This bill eliminates the IRS completely and replaces it with a fair tax, which is a national sales tax or consumption tax. I think a lot of North Dakotans would appreciate the thought of getting rid of the IRS completely.
I mean, that's.
I'm also.
I'm sorry. Well, go ahead. Let finish.
I'm just going to run down the line. You can stop me anytime.
Okay. Well, I guess. I mean, that's great. I mean, I like the fair tax too. It sounds like a great policy, but I mean, we live in an era where $10 trillion, politics is the art of the possible, right? So it seems like, and you would be one member of 535 members of Congress, 435 members of the U.S. House. How do you build a coalition to get other people to vote for something like that in Congress when, getting them to cut $10 trillion over 10 years is a stretch?
That's a great question. And I'm not sure how to answer it sitting here in Fargo, North Dakota. I need to get out to Washington and see if I suffer from the Potomac Kool-Aid disease that so many people get out there and suffer from. But I can tell you this, as corny as it sounds, we have to do it one seat at a time and one vote at a time. Right now, there's 74 congressmen that co-sponsor this bill. I would maybe be number 75. And then I'd go to work and get number 76, 77, etc. There is no magic wand that I can wave or anyone can wave to instantly change what's going on in D.C. It took us a long time to get where we're at, and I think it's going to take us some time to dig out of it. But the fact of the matter is, you got to put the pants on one leg at a time. You got to do this thing in Congress one seat at a time.
Do you feel like tell us some of the things? I mean, in the past, I mean, we had a Libertarian House candidate last cycle. What are some of the things you're going to do to, try to get into the public's consciousness and maybe break through that Republican versus Democrat, narrative that plays out every cycle? How do you as a third party candidate break in a state like North Dakota?
Well, and no offense to Eric Olson, who was our last candidate, he did as much as he could with the time and tools that he had. And, when you're a third party candidate, you're asked to run a race and also, get up and go to work every day. I'm a small business owner. I have a business to run. I have a family. It takes time, so it's very difficult when you can't make the campaign your full-time job. That being said, I have a Facebook page, I have a Twitter page, I have a website. I'm going to try and take over social media as far as the congressional race goes in 2014. You got to start small, you got to snowball it. We're out there. I post on Facebook every day. I update my Twitter account as much as I possibly can. I interact with people that ask me questions as much as I possibly can. I have a website where you can contact me. It's a grassroots effort. I'm not going to get millions of dollars. It's going to have to be a grassroots, door-to-door, person-to-person effort.
You mentioned fundraising, and I agree with you. You're probably not going to get millions of dollars in fundraising. But what does fundraising look like for a third party candidate? I mean, are there people out there who will give money to help support a race like yours?
Yeah, I have had quite a few people approach me privately, with offers of help. And the only reason I haven't accepted it yet is I'm still getting my game plan together. We're still strategizing. If we were to get a big donation, how would we most effectively spend it? Because as a third party, you have to be very careful and make sure that every dollar you spend goes a long ways. So I haven't actively started fundraising yet. I think that's going to start next Tuesday, the 28th of January at the Radisson Hotel, downtown Fargo. I am going to be having a meet and greet from 6 to 8 p.m. It's open to the public. You don't have to give any money, but if you want to come down and personally vet me out, get a chance to shake my hand, meet me, see what I'm all about, I welcome you to come on down.
In other states and in other cycles, we've seen where third-party candidates have been used by the major parties to try to split the voter base of a Republican or Democrat candidate, being, whether it's like a Green Party candidate trying to, being supported by Republicans to, dilute the voter base for the Democrat candidate, or vice versa, maybe a Libertarian Party candidate or something like that for the Republican. Are you, is that on your radar? Is that a concern for you that your, support might come from people who aren't necessarily looking for you to win, but are more looking to hamstring another candidate?
I'll take votes in any method I can possibly get them. It doesn't concern me if they're trying to take out another candidate in the process. I'm an equal opportunity libertarian. I'll take votes away from Democrats and Republicans. And the thing is, Rob, I can honestly tell you, and I think this is true, people out there are fed up, and they're looking for a different type of candidate. They don't want career politicians.
Are they fed up, though?
They don't.
We say that all the time. We hear that every cycle. Even the candidates say it. The people who have been in Washington, D.C. for 20, 30, 40 years campaign against Washington, D.C. We hear that every cycle, yet most of the time voters, despite the presence of third-party candidates on ballots across the nation, for the most part, Americans generally re-elect incumbents. Is it really true? When you say that we're fed up, and I hear that all the time, and I'm not meaning to rain on your parade, Jack, or jump on you, but I hear that all the time, and I'm wondering, is it really true? Because people say it, but then when we look at the outcome of elections, it doesn't seem like actions match up with words.
I welcome the questioning. It's a great question, and it rings true. I think a lot of people in the past have walked into that ballot booth and they go, man, I'd like to vote for the lesser of two evils, but I think I'm just going to cast a ballot for another evil because the lesser of two evils will never win. Well, until we change that mentality and people actually go in and they say, you know what, I'm voting my conscience and my heart and what I truly believe rather than what I think I should do, that's going to be the key to victory. And maybe up until now, people in North Dakota haven't had a third-party candidate that resonates with them. I'm hoping that I'm that guy.
Do you think that libertarianism can get traction in North Dakota? Because it seems to me that North Dakota is a very economically populist, socially conservative state, which seem to be the two things that are diametrically opposed to libertarianism.
Well, I think there's a huge growing libertarian faction in North Dakota politics, and we saw a glimpse of that with the last presidential run and with all the Ron Paul supporters. That was a libertarian-minded base that supported him in North Dakota, and he did very well in North Dakota. And your previous guest, you were talking about the shenanigans of the last convention. Well, that was all Ron Paul supporters that the Republican Party tried to smack down and eventually did successfully smack down. I'm asking for those kind of people, those liberty-minded people, the disenfranchised Republicans and Democrats and the independents out there that really want to make a change and throw a shot across the bow of American politics to vote a third-party candidate. Here's the deal, Rob, and you know this to be true. If I could just poll at 10% at some point during this election, that's going to be national news, politically. And if that happens, national money is going to come my way, and then we're really off to the races. So I know it sounds grandiose, but I'm very optimistic in my chances in this upcoming race.
Do you, and this is my theory about why third-party candidates can't get traction. And I'm not saying this is somebody who's necessarily opposed to third-party candidates. This is somebody I'm somebody who has voted for third-party candidates in previous elections. But it seems to me that really you have two, I mean, the Republican Democrat versus Democrat, thing is two basic philosophies. You have sort of the people who are skeptical of government and the people who are a lot less skeptical, even pro-government. I say pro-government, that makes the other side look anti-government. I don't think that's necessarily true. But those are the two basic philosophies. And the problem is if you have a third party try to come up, that third party is going to have more in common with Democrats or more in common with Republicans than the other. So libertarians, I think, have probably more in common with Republicans than Democrats. Even though I say you say you're equal opportunity, you would welcome Democrat voters and Republican voters. Generally, I think there's more overlap between libertarians and Republicans than there is between libertarians and Democrats. I think a third party can't get traction because no matter what happens, if a third party tries to get traction, it gets assimilated. The ideas, the philosophies, the platform gets assimilated by the national party. And that's that. And essentially what's going to happen, because of if you have a thriving Libertarian Party and a thriving Republican Party side by side, it seems to me that those two parties are never going to win an election against the unified Democrat Party. And I think that's why these third party efforts just never get off the ground. Your thoughts?
Well, I agree with a lot of what you had to say. And obviously some thinking among voters needs to change. And that's what I'm trying to do. But I think you're not giving enough credit to the moderate Democrats out there, especially here in North Dakota, that might hold near and dear to the Democratic Party platform in their heart, but they know that our fiscal policy is out of control and we're headed for some serious, serious problems in this country. And North Dakota is a very wealthy state, and I would hate to see the wealth of North Dakota go to D.C. to try and help solve some national problem. And I think a lot of Democrats in North Dakota understand that portion of my message. Libertarianism is very popular. It's very popular. Most Americans are fiscally conservative, and they're somewhat socially accepting. And I think that's why the Libertarian Party particularly could be really effective.
All right, Jack, thank you so much for your time. Rattle off your social media and your websites. People can find out more about your candidacy.
Sure, you can find me on Facebook. It's Jack Seaman for Congress 2014. I'm on Twitter. I got really creative. It's @FargoJack. You can follow me there. My website is Jack4ND. That's Jack, FORND.com. And Rob, I just got to say, thanks again for having me on.
Jack Seaman, Libertarian Party candidate for the U.S. House. He'll be going up against Republican incumbent Kevin Cramer and whoever the Democrats eventually nominate. Jack Seaman, once again, thank you. I'm Rob Port, sitting in for Mike Capel. We're going to go to a break. We'll be back right after this. Your call-in number, 701-293-9000, 888-970-9329. Don't go away.